Part 34. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Seong-Lang Go. Chapter 331. All substances in the world have mass. The greater the mass of an object, the stronger its mass field and the stronger the distortion of space-time. Space-time is like a sea surface squeezed by heavy objects, and will be distorted by matter with large mass. As the degree of distortion of space and time changes, the so-called universal gravitation is caused. So in the gravitational field, the properties of space-time are determined by the mass distribution of the object. To put it simply, where the density of matter is greater, space-time is more distorted, the so-called curvature of space-time is greater, and the gravitational force generated by the distortion of space-time is greater. There are countless examples of this in the universe. The most common one is that when light passes through some massive celestial bodies, its route will become curved because it will advance along the space-time curve after the massive celestial body distorts space-time. The black hole is the ultimate creation in the universe where the curvature of space and time is large enough to a certain extent. Its mass is huge, but its volume is infinitesimally small. Not even light can escape from the distorted space and time. The black sphere in Li Anping's palm is naturally unable to reach the level of a black hole. As a simulated black hole, his power is probably not even 1/1000th of that of a real black hole, but it is already powerful enough for the current underworld. And this time, it was the first time that he used pure power to distort time and space. The originally invisible black sphere turned into an existence about the size of a fingernail after swallowing countless stones, soil, and vegetation. The terrible suction force continued to come from inside him, and his power to swallow the surrounding materials became stronger and stronger. The ground under Li Anping's feet. Large chunks of land were constantly being lifted up and then sucked into the black sphere. The entire land is disappearing faster and faster. Paladin looked at the disappearing land in disbelief, and his originally smooth face was filled with surprise. Does he want to destroy the entire land of Hades? What's the point? Pluto laughed, but there was no joy in his voice. Don't you understand yet? He is simulating a black hole and wants to use powerful force to forcibly create a high-density, high-quality celestial body. Pluto's voice seemed to tremble. The space of the Hades world cannot be like the real world. The space is so solid. If the quality and density of the things he creates are indeed large enough. The words have not yet fallen. The suction force of the simulated black hole in Li Anping's hand increased again, and the ground with a radius of dozens of kilometers began to tremble. Countless pieces of earth and stone rose into the sky and flew towards the simulated black hole. At this time, the simulated black hole has grown to the size of a finger after absorbing so much material. Li Anping felt the material above his head. The suction force coming from it became stronger and stronger, and with a push, the simulated black hole flew towards the sky under the influence of him and the incarnation of his mind energy. As he ascended into the air, the area affected by the ground beneath his feet became larger and larger in just a few minutes. Even the earth and rocks hundreds of kilometers away began to float. Seeing the sphere slowly moving towards him in mid-air, Paladin said angrily, "Think of a way quickly. According to you, if this thing continues to strengthen like this, it will directly break the space channel from the underworld to the real world." Hades brooded. But like Paladin, he couldn't think of any solution. Li Anping in front of me. The limit of its power has already reached a level unimaginable by others. Now, he is relying on the naked violence of Chilugo to forcibly carve a way to the real world. They had no choice but to hope that Li Anping's power would be exhausted and he would be unable to do this. When more than 500 square kilometers of land disappeared, only countless black substances could be seen appearing in the original location of the Earth. That is the scene at the boundary of the entire Hades space. The land of Hades is only a few kilometers deep in total. Once the earth and rocks on it are peeled off, you will see this scene. At this time, the simulated black hole in the sky looked like a round stone, about 1/5 the size of the blood moon, but the gravity coming from it was far beyond the blood moon. As his mass increased and his position got closer and closer to the blood moon, Paladin felt a strong suction force that seemed to want to pull him over. If he hadn't used all his strength, his feet would have stepped deeply. After entering the surface of the blood moon, he might be pulled towards the simulated black hole anytime and anywhere. Li Enping. Looking at the simulated black hole that was getting stronger and closer, Paladin opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but after just saying the 3 words Li Enping, no matter how he said it, nothing came out. No more words could be uttered. Pluto sighed in his heart. He knew that although the simulated black hole in front of him could not swallow light, it had reached the point where it could swallow sound. The Paladin on the blood moon was shaken slightly, and his whole body was pulled out of the blood moon by a huge force, heading towards the simulated black hole in mid-air at high speed. The next moment, his entire body would be like a pack of ketchup, as if someone had pressed it directly on a simulated black hole, and a pool of red would burst out with a pop. Then his body just lay on the surface of the simulated black hole. In just an instant, under the strong pressure, it directly turned into pieces that were difficult to distinguish with the naked eye, and was then directly covered by the mud and rocks coming from behind. But before all this happened, Li Enping had caught him and came to the back of the simulated black hole. As the simulated black hole intensified and approached again, the rock layers on the blood moon have been completely peeled off. If you look from below, you can see that the entire blood moon seems to be deforming and becoming slightly flatter. In fact, its size has not changed, but the time and space it is in has begun to be distorted. This is because the underworld, as an artificial space, is far less solid than the space in the real world. The next moment, the space seemed to begin to break, and the simulated black hole that had become the size of a house directly hit the blood moon. With endless breaking sounds, the space near the entire blood moon seemed to be rippled. A bright light shot out from the center of the blood moon, and then more and more light shot out. A one-person-sized passage appeared in the center of the blood moon, and the scene of Tianjing could be seen from inside. With the appearance of this passage, the entire underworld world was like a bungalow that had been violently demolished. It began to tremble violently, and black cracks began to appear in the surrounding sky. The simulated black hole was about to destroy the entire underworld space. At the same time, a black shadow was seen cutting through the atmosphere like lightning, and Li Enping had already grabbed Paladin and rushed towards the passage. Tianjing, Hades screamed, and Li Enping had already rushed out of his chest holding Paladin. After returning to the real world, Li Enping immediately summoned the incarnation of mind energy back. He didn't want the incarnation of mind energy to perish with the entire underworld. As for the Paladin in his hand, Li Enping grabbed it and pulled it out. A series of huge impacts had already knocked him unconscious. And Hades knelt directly on the ground, and cracks began to appear on his body. Black gas came out of those cracks. At this time, even if Li Enping took away the incarnation of mind energy, the destruction of the underworld was irreversible. Hades was like a porcelain doll that was smashed to the ground, with large areas of cracks on his body. When he stopped screaming, he raised his head and looked at Li Enping in disbelief. There was still a black crack on his face, which directly split his head in half. The underworld has disappeared. Hades laughed bitterly, not knowing whether he was laughing at himself or at Li Enping. Without the underworld, I have lost my ability, but because of the country of Huangquan, I am still alive for the time being. Li Enping. Hades looked at Li Enping steadily. From now on, I will be a pure spectator. Let me see whether you have defeated the whole world or the Queen of Heaven and others have destroyed you. With your power, how far can you go? Li Enping ignored Hades, his ears moved slightly, and all kinds of information had been transmitted to his mind. Then the black incarnation of the mind moved slightly, and it had turned into a black line, rushing towards the direction of the airport. And Li Enping shook the Paladin in his hand, and seeing that the other party woke up, He imitated Paladin's previous words and said with a mocking face, "Paladin, right? My name is Li Enping, the lord of the great Xia dragon bird, the king of the East continent. If you are willing to be my subordinate now, then I can let you go." Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Go. Chapter 332. After hearing what Li Enping said, Paladin didn't say anything. He just closed his eyes and looked resigned. Li Enping understands that religious fanatics like this, who are on a mission to save the world, are so stubborn that they cannot be persuaded in just one or two sentences. Even if he is tortured and uses various brainwashing methods, it may not be able to change his mind. And the most important thing is that Paladin still has hope in his heart, that is the Star Alliance and the imaginary number agency. This time to besiege Tianjing, the Truth Religion sent out the entire Knights Templar, among which the combination of Paladin and Hades was the ultimate move. And Paladin was quite sure that the Star Alliance and the imaginary number agency who came together must also have plans on how to eliminate Li Enping. In fact, he was right, and Li Enping in front of him also realized this. This time when he came to besiege Tianjing, a leader like Paladin had definitely arranged arrangements for him, which was not something that could be dismissed so easily. Just like the delay caused by Shang Jinhai and the others before, and the death cycle of Paladin later. So he slightly changed his previous arrangement, still giving priority to the degree of criticality. Li Enping planned to deal with the weaker opponents in Tianjing city first. He gently squeezed Paladin's neck, causing the Paladin to faint immediately. Pluto on the side saw Li Enping throwing the unconscious Paladin on the ground so casually, and couldn't help but said, "Are you just going to throw him here like this? Aren't you afraid of being rescued by others? I will kill whoever saves him." After saying these words coldly, Li Enping jumped lightly and flew towards the palace. The outskirts of Tianjing. In the woods towards the airport. From time to time, a series of crashing sounds came from inside the forest, startling a flock of birds. Sudden. A huge iceberg appeared across the sky, and hundreds of blood bats were frozen in the iceberg. Bai Xing, who was under the iceberg, dodged and got out of the way of Samael's sudden attack, followed by a series of sparks flying. The two of them fought quickly, and the swords in their hands were like lightning in the sky. At this moment, they struck one after another. After passing through a space of 100 meters in radius, countless large trees were torn to pieces, turned into debris all over the sky. Then with a roar, Kron was already like a huge battleship, carrying terrifying kinetic energy and rushing towards the location of the two of them. Every step he took on the ground would cause the earth to tremble, and no matter where he passed, trees and rocks were all thrown into the sky. Bai Xing's left hand is still broken. The continuous high-intensity battles left him no time to heal. Seeing Crane charging at this moment, he already understood that the opponent was not afraid of being injured by the reaction force, and had no scruples about using his full strength. That kind of pure brute force was no longer something he could resist head-on. But he wanted to dodge, but Samael kept sticking to him with his teleportation. He had no chance to get out of the way. In the blink of an eye, Kron was in front of him, and Bai Xing separated Samael with a sword again. The cold air suddenly passed to Samael's body through the two swords, causing the other person's body to pause. And he made time. Reluctantly, he raised his broken left hand and pressed his palm against Kron's charging body with a gentle force. I saw a powerful and pure brute force transmitted directly along Bai Xing's arms to the soles of his feet. In the huge explosion, the ground rolled up, but Bai Xing, who had lost most of his power, still groaned and was knocked away by the remaining power. Blood began to leave his ears, and his already twisted arm was severely injured. Not only was the elbow completely detached, there was also a small white broken bone stubble that directly broke through the skin and pierced out. Kron, who suffered the same reaction force, looked uncomfortable. Most of his arms were completely shattered. However, As black energy surged out of his body, directly filling the surrounding soil, his body recovered quickly. Seeing Bai Xing's embarrassed look, Crane couldn't help laughing wildly. Are you still waiting for Li Anping? He can't save you anymore. Because now, I'm afraid he can't save himself. The iceberg on the side suddenly emitted a hissing white air. Hundreds of blood bats with flaming bodies had broken through the ice and rejoined in mid-air, transforming into the human form of the blood demon. You scum, if it weren't for the lack of blood food around you. There was a sinister look in the blood demon's eyes. In the series of battles just now, he was the one who suffered the most damage, but had almost no results. Compared to Samael and Kron, it was much worse. Unfortunately, this is not because of his lack of strength, but because of the limitations of his abilities. This made him feel ashamed and angry, and he looked at Bai Xing with even more unkind eyes. Samael on the side weighed the things in his hands and asked curiously, is this thing made according to Xi and Dong Jiang's sword? Samael was punched by Xi and Jun in Dongyang. The sword has absorbed abilities. Bai Xing's expression changed when he saw the legend in Samael's hand. He hurriedly touched his back, but found nothing. Just now, Samael's continuous teleportation attack actually pulled the legend off Bai Xing's back. Bai Xing looked at Samael with a cold look on his face and said word by word, give me the sword back. Samael smiled, so, is it true? Then he also has that kind of function. He looked at Bai Xing and then at the long sword in his hand, his eyes revealed a thoughtful light, know what to think. The blood demon on the side asked irritably, what crossword puzzle are you doing? Is there anything special about this sword? Samael smiled mysteriously and said nothing, but squeezed the sword in his hand tighter. Bai Xing narrowed his eyes, and a cold light seemed to emerge from his eyes. The injury to my left hand is too severe. If this continues, let alone leaving, I won't even be able to get the sword back. Bai Xing has been fighting with 3 resurrectors here for more than 10 minutes. In these more than 10 minutes, he has killed them at least 10 times. Even Samael, who can teleport, was directly frozen to death by him nearly once. However, the other party relied on the immortal body granted by the Kingdom of Underworld to trade death for injuries. Not only did Bai Xing drag him here, but his physical strength and mental energy were constantly depleted, and his body was constantly injured. Especially his left hand now, which has seriously affected his combat effectiveness. Thinking of this, he looked at his left hand, which had almost only a bit of flesh attached to it, and suddenly raised the original 10-fist sword in his right hand. I can only chop off my left hand first, and then work hard to take back the world and find His Majesty. Kron hit his 2 fists against each other, making a thunderous explosion, and then roared, enough rest, let's continue. I want to return to you one by one what you brought to me last time. Bai Xing exhaled and turned the blade of his right hand, already cutting towards his left elbow. But when the 10-fist sword was about to cut off his entire right arm, the blade stopped. At this time, the blade had almost penetrated half an inch into the flesh, and a trace of blood remained from the blade. Samael chuckled and said, what? Can't cut it down? Then let me help you. As he said that, he had inserted the dagger in his hand back into his waist, holding the legendary sword in both hands, and pointed it at Bai Xing's direction. Unexpectedly, Bai Xing, who had been solemn just now, suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, looked at the 3 of them indifferently, especially Samael, and said, I advise you 3, drop your swords and run away. He looked at the sky behind the 3 people. A black line was flying silently towards the location of the 3 people. It was so fast that it seemed to cut the entire sky in 2. When Samael heard Bai Xing's words, he seemed to be looking at a fool. Are you crazy? Don't say it's you. We who have immortality now are not afraid even if Li Anping comes. Crane also chuckled and said, you have no idea how powerful we are now. It is impossible to defeat us now. What nonsense are you talking about? The blood demon's body burned with blood flames again, Kill him quickly and return to Tianjing. I can't wait to find Li Anping. I want to peel off his skin bit by bit. Bai Xing shook his head, looked at the three people in front of him as if they were dead, and said softly, "Goodbye." Before the three of them could react, the next moment, a bolt of black lightning fell from the sky and hit Samael's position with thunderous force. Two black feet stepped directly on Samael's head. The huge force crushed his head in an instant, and his eyes flew hundreds of meters away. Then the feet took Samael's head all the way into the chest and abdomen, turning the opponent's body into a puddle of flesh, and finally smashed it hard on the ground. Within hundreds of kilometers, the entire earth was torn apart by this blow. With the hit position as the center of the circle, the soil rolled away in all directions like waves. Countless trees were lifted up wherever they passed. The smoke and dust rose directly into the sky, carrying countless pieces of soil, grass, and rocks into the sky, and then slowly fell to the ground under the influence of gravity. When the smoke and dust that had obscured everything gradually dissipated, you could see that the place where Samael had been standing had turned into a big pit. Samael's whole body has turned into a ball of blackened flesh, trembling and struggling, as if he wants to regroup and recover. At this time, the incarnation of mind energy stepped on this corpse, because he had just fallen directly from the sky, trampled the opponent's head and body, and trampled it into a pulp. At this time, the incarnation of Nian Qi was holding the handed-down sword in his hand, and the black Nian Qi was rising all over his body. He looked at Samael, who was struggling under his feet, and even slowly grew an eye, so he stepped on it. He went up and smashed the eyeball directly with a pop. Then he raised his head and looked at Gorfiend and Crane. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 333. Just a glance, both Kron and Blood Demon felt suffocated. What am I afraid of? I am now immortal with the power I can use without scruples, even Li Anping. Kron thought of this and felt ashamed for his instinctive fear just now. He roared and rushed towards Li Anping. The power driven by the rotation of the earth was continuously injected into Kron's body. Based on the limit that this body can bear, even if the whole body will explode in the next moment, it is not a pity. The brute force brought by this is also extremely fierce. Wherever Kron's fist passes, a vacuum corridor is directly formed. The hurricane blowing can even blow down the surrounding trees. With his current strength, I am afraid that just waving his hand can blow away a street. Feeling the power contained in his right fist that is enough to tear the sky, Kron has never felt that he can be so powerful. This feeling of satisfaction from being full of strength made him punch Li Anping's chest with great confidence. Facing Kron's punch, Li Anping also stretched out his right fist, without any preparation, without any accumulation of strength, and even without any feeling of exerting force. He just used fist to fist, and his right fist gently hit Kron's fist. The imagined scene of a comet hitting the earth did not appear. Kron was like a piece of tofu hitting a steel plate. After the fists collided with each other, he didn't even feel a trace of pain. His whole body turned into a pool of mud under the action of two huge forces. It burst out in all directions. A squeaky scream sounded, and the blood demon on the side saw that Kron was so easily blown up by Li Anping's punch. A horrified expression flashed across his face, and he immediately forgot everything he had just said. The whole person has turned into hundreds of blood-colored bats, flying away in all directions. Facing the fleeing blood demon, Li Anping suddenly opened his mouth and took a deep breath. As Li Anping took a deep breath, the air around him was sucked into his mouth in a visible form. The whole forest was like a hurricane. Li Anping's mouth was like a bottomless black hole, turning all the air around into a strong wind and sucking it into his lungs. Bai Xing, who was standing aside, even felt that he had difficulty breathing and felt that his body was about to be pulled up. He immediately lowered his waist and sat on the horse, holding the ground tightly with his feet. Even the trees within 100 meters were directly sucked up by this breath and flew into the sky. But before they flew a few meters, they were torn into pieces by the bursting airflow. Between the inhalation and exhalation, the mountains and rivers changed color. Li Anping's breath was simply earth-shaking. With this breath, the blood bats that had already flown more than 100 meters began to have difficulty walking, as if every meter they flew, they had to use up all their strength, like a small boat in a storm, unable to control their own life and death. Even after flying a few meters, all the blood bats began to retreat, following the direction of the wind, shooting towards Li Anping's position. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of blood bats were sucked into Li Anping's mouth, swallowed alive. When Li Anping stopped breathing, the whole forest looked like it had been hit by a strong wind. As far as the eyes could see, there was no intact tree. A blood-colored bat emerged from Li Anping's mouth, as if struggling to crawl out. But when Li Anping's upper and lower teeth closed, the bat had turned into a pile of fragments and was swallowed directly by Li Anping. On the other side, Kron's body had been regenerated, his hands tightly grasping the ground, his eyes full of fear looking at Li Anping. He couldn't believe that the other party had eaten the blood demon alive. At this moment, Li Anping had become a demon among demons in his eyes. Seeing Li Anping looking at him, he felt a chill in his heart, even forgetting that he had died once, and shouted loudly, "Don't eat me, I surrender." Li Anping didn't plan to eat Kron as well. After all, he just wanted to try to see if he could destroy these guys with immortal bodies by eating him. However, it seems that the immortality of the Yellow Spring country is almost absolute. Although the blood demon was eaten by him, it kept making trouble in his stomach, always between being dissolved by his gastric juice and not being dissolved. Even if it was dissolved, it would grow out again immediately. So Li Anping didn't plan to eat another one. Just then he raised his eyebrows, and Samael, who was still under his feet before, had regenerated completely, leaving a series of after-images and quickly flashing away to the side. Damn it! What kind of monster is this guy Li Anping? It's dead. Whether it's the Star Alliance or the Virtual Numbers Agency, they are all finished this time. This monster is simply not something that humans can destroy. Before in Xindanjiang, Samael had not felt the horror of Li Anping. Although he knew from reading the information that he was very strong, it was nothing compared to the horror he felt personally at this moment. Now he only had one thought in his mind: to escape. He did not even look back. His body flashed again, but his eyes were covered by a sudden shadow. It turned out that Li Anping rushed in front of him at an indescribable speed and put his index finger on his forehead. At this time, Samael hadn't even reacted yet. He was still in a blank state after completing the teleportation. His eyes had received the image but hadn't yet responded to the brain. With a bang, Li Anping's index finger flicked directly on his brain, and his brain was instantly blown up like a watermelon again. Not to mention his ability, he couldn't even make any movements. Then he saw Li Anping grab his shoulder with one hand, and the void force field instantly squeezed Samael into a ball of flesh. After weighing the ball of flesh in his palm, Li Anping looked up at the sky. What does he want to do? Kron swallowed his saliva. Just as Samael and Li Anping were chasing and fleeing, he still had the idea of escaping himself. Who knew that before he could think of this idea, Samael's head had been directly blown up by Li Anping's finger, and then squeezed into a ball of flesh. Seeing Li Anping's actions, a bad premonition came to his mind. His premonition was not wrong. Li Anping grabbed the meatball that Samael had pressed into, took a step back, made a power-gathering motion, and then took a step forward, just like throwing a baseball, and threw the meatball directly into the sky. A wave of air burst out from Li Anping's hand. The meatball had already brought a line of blood straight into the sky, and the posture looked like an electromagnetic cannon, directly knocking a hole in the clouds in the sky and shooting forward into outer space. If it were an ordinary meatball, it would probably turn into ashes before flying far. But Samael was now immortal, so he was directly pushed by Li Anping's huge force, piercing through the entire atmosphere and flying towards the universe. Then Li Anping's body flashed and grabbed the frightened Kron. The next action looked like an adult grabbing a primary school student, then forcibly squeezing the other party into a ball, and finally throwing him into the universe. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xianglang Ge. Chapter 334. In the palace auditorium, the entrance has been guarded by soldiers with loaded guns and ammunition. The guests in the venue looked a little restless. Standing in the direction of the gate, Xiu Umei heard the report from his subordinates rushing back from outside. The more he listened, the uglier his face became. The ambassador from the Federation ignored the soldiers' obstruction and walked up directly. He pointed to the left vein and asked, "What is the situation outside now? Why are all our communication equipment cut off? How is Daxia's defense work done?" Zhou Mai frowned and looked around at the doubtful, anxious, and nervous people around him. He could only avoid the important things and said lightly, "It's okay, everyone. We just encountered some traffic problems during the parade. Please return to your seats. Your Majesty will be here soon coming." After hearing his explanation, everyone was naturally very dissatisfied. Ambassador Tyrell on the other side also stood up and asked directly, "Do you think we are 3-year-old children? How many times have you said this? We have a right to know what is really going on out there. Otherwise, this will be a serious diplomatic dispute. Sir Zhou, do you know how many countries' representatives are sitting here?" After he said this, more people began to boo, especially those small countries belonging to the Western continent. They all followed Tyrell and the Federation and began to accuse Daxia of not doing enough work. On the other hand, everyone on the Eastern continent remained silent, acting as if the matter had nothing to do with them. A few, like Princess Fang Yuelin of 100 Moon and Claudia of Ice Castle, looked at the Western continent representatives with sarcastic expressions. "All right." At this moment, Fang Yahuang coughed lightly. The inhuman aura of the 5th energy level was released and then retreated, and everyone present fell silent. Even the representatives of the Federation and Tyrell, who were originally causing the most trouble. At this moment, he glanced at Fang Yahuang and said nothing more. Level 5 ability users are indeed powerful forces that can influence the situation of a country. The people present here are representatives sent by various countries to Daxia to participate in the ceremony. They are not ordinary civilians in the Western continent and do not know the existence of ability users. They are very aware of the power and privileges of the 5th energy level, and they also know the identity of Fang Yahuang. It can be said that even if Fang Yahuang beats them up now, they will never be able to get back to this situation in their lives. So even if you curse words like barbaric yellow-skinned monkey and inferior race in your heart, but at least on the surface, they would not do anything to not give Fang Yahuang face. Seeing that most of the guests sat back down again, Zhou Mai breathed a sigh of relief, nodded towards Fang Yahuang's position, and began to direct the work again. Fang Yahuang also nodded kindly towards Xiu Umei. If it had been more than a year ago, before the Battle of Dongyang had begun, Fang Yahuang might have defeated Li Anping. The idea of becoming the strongest in the world. But the Battle of Dongyang, the series of events that followed, and Li Anping's terrifying strength was revealed again and again. Let the ambition in Fang Yahuang's heart be extinguished little by little. The strongest. Strength. This is what Fang Yahuang has been pursuing all his life, even the throne, power, and wealth. He can abandon these things without a care for more powerful power. But Li Anping, the man who stood before him like a big mountain, made him lose the motivation to catch up. However, because of his initial ambition, he missed the opportunity to join Daxia Longke in the first place. Now see Bizang, Emma. Dr. Xiaoligang and other 5th level experts. And Daxialonke is becoming more and more powerful. Now he really wants to join this core class. But I never found the opportunity. Previously, he and Yan Bei worked together to eliminate the jihadist organization, but Li Anping only gave him a few compliments. So after coming to Tianjin this time, Fang Yahuang has been looking for opportunities to make friends with Li Anping and Daxialonke. The scene just now was obviously done on purpose by him. However, not long after everyone sat down, they heard gunshots and explosions outside the auditorium. Fang Yahuang also frowned, because in Tianjin, and even in the palace, he had not released his mind energy to scan the surrounding situation, so he did not know what was going on outside. However, continuous gunshots were heard inside the palace. Obviously, the situation outside was already very bad. At this moment, the door of the auditorium was kicked open with a bang, and a man with a face as pale as a zombie, and his eyes completely white, slowly walked in. Although the man's appearance had changed a lot compared to when he stood up, Fang Yahuang still recognized him at first sight. Kylin, he said to himself with some disbelief. On the other side, the dragon bird guards and soldiers present all pointed their guns at the intruding Kylin king. Zhou Mei looked outside the gate and saw that a large number of corpses had fallen. It was obviously the work of the man in front of him. He shouted, "Who are you? Break into the palace without permission. Surrender immediately if you don't want to die." The Kylin king chuckled softly, and saw layers of silvery white scales growing out of his body, and the muscles on his body continued to expand as if he had taken hormones, and his whole body soon became a huge beast wrapped in silver white scales. When he was just resurrected by the kingdom of Underworld, he was still a little unruly and unwilling to obey Paladin's orders, but when Paladin showed his ability to completely dominate him, he had no choice but to obey. Moreover, he was killed by Li Anping himself and came to Tianjin to take revenge on him, which obviously suited his taste very much. Ha 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 ha. King Kylin roared, "Li Anping is dead. Now, come and bury him with him." Suddenly hearing what the Kylin king said, it immediately caused a small commotion in the entire auditorium. Without saying a word, Zhou Mei pointed out a high-temperature ray and shot it towards the location of the Kylin king. However, after the ray hit the opponent's scales, it only melted a few scales and had no other effect. The other guards also fired at the same time, but the bullets hit the Kylin king's scales. The poop has no effect other than sparking sparks. Instead, the Kylin king roared. Rays of lightning shot out from his body, and he rushed into the dragon bird guards like a tiger rushing into a flock of sheep. He was seen walking around in the crowd, and he could cut off a dragon bird guard with just one claw. Sometimes he even grabbed a person directly and bit off the other person's head. Zhou Mei was the strongest among the dragon bird guards present, but even he faced the Kylin king, a person with immortality. There is no way at all. In just 1 minute, more than half of the dragon bird guards present had turned into tattered corpses. All the guests in the lobby screamed and fled to the corners of the auditorium. Fang Yuelin stood up and shouted, "Father? Are you still alive?" When the Kylin king heard this, his body trembled, and he looked at Fang Yuelin's position, with a terrifying smile on his beast-like face. "Yulin, you are here too." He threw away a corpse in his hands. Slowly walked towards Fang Yuelin, who stood up. "Father, that's great, you're not dead." The huge beast grinned, and a strong smell of blood emerged from the Kylin king's mouth. He said as he walked, "No, I am dead. But I crawled out of hell again. Come to Li Anping for revenge." The next moment, he rushed towards Fang Yuelin with an afterimage, and threw his huge claws directly towards Fang Yuelin's head, sending him flying away. Fang Yuelin climbed up tremblingly, his whole cheek swollen. He looked at Kylin king in disbelief. "Father. You bitch," King Kylin said angrily, Li Anping killed me, and you and your mother actually considered the thief as your father. Are you seeking refuge with him? Watching Yong'er and the others die at the hands of Li Anping. You don't deserve to be my daughter. His eyes swept across the crowd and suddenly stopped on Claudia. The holy princess of the ice castle. There was a trace of lust in Kylan King's eyes, and his scarlet tongue stuck out from his mouth. I heard that you have become Li Anping's woman? He, if I fall in love with you now, would he be so angry that he would jump out of his grave? After saying that, he had already walked towards Claudia's location, obviously intending to use his current transformed form to execute Claudia directly on the spot. Seeing the monster-like Kylan King approaching, everyone immediately screamed and dispersed. Claudia stepped aside in panic, but found that the figure flashed, and the Kylan King had appeared in front of him, trying to grab him. Claudia. The 10 fingers of the left pulse were connected, and various rays of high temperature, cold, or decomposition hit the Kylan King, but they could not stop the other party's movements. He said angrily, Fang Yahuang, are you going to rebel? That's enough. Hearing a soft shout, the Kylan King found that his hand could not touch Claudia, who was so close at hand no matter what. He slowly turned his head, looked at the place where the soft drink came from, and murmured, Do you want to stop me? Fang Yahuang looked at King Kylan with a somewhat gloomy expression. Kylan, are you really not dead? King Kylan laughed loudly, his words full of resentment. Death? I have already died in Li Anping's hands. Now I am resurrected by Paladin's kingdom of hell. You didn't avenge me when we were in Kikan, and you became Li Anping's thug. Are you going to stop me from taking revenge now? My good father? Fang Yahuang sighed and just asked, Paladin? Is he the leader of the Knights Templar? Is the Codex Kingdom also here? King Kylan sneered and said, Yes, not only the Codex Kingdom, but also the Star Alliance of the Queen of Heaven and the Imaginary Number Agency of the Federation are here. The entire Tianjing is already in our possession. As soon as Kylan King said this, everyone at the scene was in an uproar. The Knights Templar, the Imaginary Number Agency, and the Star Alliance are all vital players in the Western continent, affecting the changes in the entire world. At this moment, they actually gathered in Daxia capital to besiege Li Anping together. Fang Yahuang's face showed hesitation, and he suddenly asked, You just said that Li Anping is dead? Are you sure? When Fang Yahuang asked this question, Zhou Mai's expression changed and his heart slowly sank. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 335. Hearing Fang Yahuang's words, Kylan King sneered and said, Even if everything is fine now, it will probably be soon. In addition to the Queen of Heaven who has reached the 6th level, there are more than 20 level 5 strong men who besieged Tianjing this time. Do you think Li Anping still has hope of survival? When Kylan King said this, everyone at the scene was shocked. A level 6 ability user, more than 20 level 5 ability users. Usually, a level 5 ability user is rare, an absolute big shot, with the power to subvert a country. What's more, there are more than 20 level 5 ability users now, which is simply a force that can change the direction of human history. Even Li Anping is probably not the opponent of this force. Most people present thought so. Even Zhou Mai and his dragon bird guards couldn't help but worry. Moreover, Li Anping has not appeared yet, and Tianjing's defense array has no reaction, which makes some people confirm Kylan King's statement. Is what the Kylan King said true or false? If there are really so many people besieging your majesty? Zhou Mai thought of this and began to get nervous. After hearing this, Fang Yahuang remained silent, but still did not unlock the 33 caves, and still trapped the Kylan King in place. Seeing that he was still hesitant, the Kylan King said angrily, Father, what are you still hesitating about? Whether it's Li Anping or Daxia, they are all finished. Do you still want to try to stop a chariot with a mantis arm? Can you stop the revenge of so many level 5 ability users? You can die if you want, but don't take the entire bio to bury you with it. Fan Yehuang frowned. Li Anping will not be defeated so easily compared with the Kailan king who was killed instantly by Li Anping. Fan Yehuang knew Li Anping's strength better. And what he was most worried about was that if so many ability users failed to kill Li Anping and the other party escaped, I'm afraid everyone would be retaliated by Li Anping. Especially if he betrayed directly like him. It will be the #1 target for Li Anping's revenge. After thinking about it, Fan Yehuang still didn't dare to remove the 33 caves. Kailan King looked at Fan Yehuang fiercely and understood his plan. His good father was probably thinking of playing both sides, wanting to stalemate with him here, and then when there was definite news, the side that won would help the other side. But his ability was restrained by the 33 caves. Now Fan Yehuang changed the space distance around Kailan King, and he had no way to do it. At this moment, a black mind swept across and swept over the bodies of everyone in the auditorium. Ordinary people didn't find anything unusual, but Fan Yehuang, Kailan King, and Zhou Mai all changed their faces. Some were happy, some were angry. Some were afraid, because the violence and murderous intent brought by the mind were too obvious. That was Li Anping's mind. In fact, Li Anping's hearing was enough to cover the entire Tianjing, and almost every corner of Tianjing with sound was under his monitoring. The progress of all the events in the auditorium has been under his control. The reason why he has not been there is that the situation in some places is more critical. For example, the entire palace. Li Anping was seen above the palace, and the black mind energy flashed behind him. The mind energy incarnation has appeared with the sword handed down from generation to generation. After sending the sword to the world, the mind energy incarnation has already flown towards the direction of the Daxia dragon bird base. Li Anping held the sword in one hand in the air, and the black mind energy surged out, covering the entire palace, and Li Anping had closed his eyes. Screams. Roars, explosions. Running, the sound of the blade scratching the skin, the sound of bullets passing through the air. At this moment, all entered his mind, intertwined with the structural diagram of the entire palace, and formed a perfect dynamic map with the scanning of the mind energy. The attackers of the palace were Li Anping's clones from Violet. Each of them was as strong as Li Anping who fought against Tom the Destroyer in Emerald City. Even more powerful. Each of these clones is equivalent to a powerful level 4 ability user, and even ordinary level 5 ability users have some trouble dealing with them. So when they invaded the palace, the Imperial Guards collapsed at the first touch, with almost no resistance. Even the leader Scorpion was seriously injured and unconscious, and was sent to the depths of the palace. In just 10 minutes, only 1 in 10 of the entire Imperial Guards survived, while the clones suffered almost no casualties. The blood of the Imperial Guards dyed the entire palace red. A total of 2,000 enemies. There are still 3,000 Imperial Guards left, and they are fleeing to the auditorium with their wives and ministers. The voice kept coming into Li Anping's ears, and with the mind covering the entire palace, the voice and position of each enemy were input into his mind. At this moment, Li Anping mastered the position of everyone in the palace. The handed-down sword in his hand stirred in the air, and the hand and sword brought a series of after-images, cutting through the air at a frequency of thousands of times per second, bringing one air shock wave after another. The sword of the past is not only made of adamantium alloy, which is unparalleled in its sturdiness, but also has Emma's spatial cutting, making it countless times sharper than before. White light flashed from the sword of the past, and countless gases like sword light and sword mist slashed towards the palace as Li Anping swung his sword. There were exactly 2,000 sword energy fluctuations, flying at supersonic speed, like a brilliant meteor shower, covering the entire palace. Wherever it passes, whether it is walls, roofs, or combat uniforms, everything is cut in two. No clone can dodge or resist any wave of sword energy. 2,000 clones corresponded to 2,000 sword energy waves. They were either cut in half by the sword energy waves, or their heads were cut off, or they were smashed into pieces. Almost in the same second, they all turned into one. Broken corpses on the ground. Seeing this, the entire Forbidden Army burst into cheers, and cheered as they looked at Li Anping in the air. After killing all the intruders in the palace with one sword, Li Anping raised his head, looking as if through layers of space, looking at a certain existence in the sky. 10,000 meters above the palace, an arc like a black coffin was floating slowly. The person in charge of Violet's operations, with a head of white hair, looked at the palace on the screen and smiled excitedly. For this operation, the Covenant paid to hire them and also provided the ark for their use. Very good, this actual battle was very successful. The old man looked at the rows of data and said slowly, if we can get the mother's body this time, the clone warrior's data will definitely improve again. Having said this, he turned to the assistant on the side and asked, how are the casualties so far? The assistant clicked on his injured tablet and reported, there are no casualties yet. I believe it is only a matter of time before the entire palace is occupied. At this moment, a staff member suddenly screamed, Li Anping is here. As the camera on the screen continued to zoom in, Li Anping's appearance above the palace appeared in front of everyone. The white-haired old man looked at Li Anping in mid-air with a fervent expression. His eyes looked like he was looking at a peerless beauty. But before he could give any orders, he saw Li Anping swinging his sword with his right hand, and the white wave of sword energy spread towards the entire palace. The white-haired old man looked at the screen in disbelief. The data representing the clones was decreasing rapidly. In less than a second, all the clones had been killed. Facing the real Li Anping, they were like toys and showed no resistance. Power! An operator exclaimed, no, he seems to have discovered us. What? Before the white-haired old man could react, Li Anping's figure on the screen flashed and disappeared. Where did he go? Can't find it? He's too fast. He's heading towards us. One worker screamed, he's coming over Mach 10. He's already here. Where? The old man asked nervously. But no one answered, so he yelled in fear, who told me where he is? The assistant on the side looked pale and clicked on the tablet in his hand. Li Anping appeared on the screen again. He said tremblingly. He's right on top of us. The old man's eyes were fixed on Li Anping in the screen. What does he want to do? No one answered the old man's question. All the staff stopped their work and looked at Li Anping on the screen. At this moment, their life is all in the hands of this man. As for Li Anping, the handed-down sword in his hand vibrated again, bringing a series of after-images across the air. This time, two sword energy fluctuations of more than 1 kilometer, one horizontally and one vertically, struck directly on the black arc. Boom! The entire arc shook violently. The white-haired old man clung to the seat and looked at Li Anping on the screen with despair. He never imagined that Li Anping would find them from such a distance, let alone that the clones and the ark would be so vulnerable in front of the other party. Where is the queen? Where is the titan? Where have they gone? Why did Li Anping come back to attack us? Beside him, some of the staff and assistants were panicking and wanted to run away, while others were desperate and seemed to be despairing. Li Anping's two sword energy fluctuations directly cut the arc open along the cross line and turned it into 4 parts. The staff looked at the arc that was broken into 4 pieces, exploding and collapsing, and they were completely unable to understand how Li Anping did it. The next moment, the entire arc had disintegrated into countless parts, falling towards the sky. However, before it fell much, it was covered by more and denser sword energy fluctuations, and turned into countless powder, falling towards the ground. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiang Lango. Chapter 336. While Li Anping was clearing the invaders inside and outside Tianjing City one by one. In the center of the defense array, the doctor's hands were quickly tapping the keyboard. At this moment, a portal suddenly appeared behind him, and Emma came out of it with a look of embarrassment. Her hair was stuck together by sweat, and there were even 2 or 3 bloodstains on her cheeks. What's going on? The queen is attacking the base with Zhurong and Songbang. I sent Xia Likeng and Xia Yunyun to support them, but I'm afraid they won't be able to hold on for long. Emma's eyes revealed a hint of nervousness. The 6th energy level is much stronger than I thought. If it weren't for His Majesty, I'm afraid the queen alone would be enough to sweep us away. Xia Yunyun? Why did you send her over? Do you want to be eaten by Li Anping? Emma waved her hand. She has subdued a monster in Xindanjiang and can help. Forget it, Li Anping is out of trouble now anyway. I'm adjusting the defense array. I'm afraid it will take some time. While saying this, the doctor kept moving his hands, and the screen jumped quickly. The opponent is very cunning, and the gravity coefficient is constantly changing dynamically. This will take me more time. The entire defense array must be converted from static to dynamic. How long will it take you? The doctor said without turning his head. Give me 2 more minutes. 2 minutes, Emma said angrily, then I'll go help over there first. No, the doctor stopped Emma and said lightly, the opponent has found this place. There are about 3 level 5 ability users. You help me stop them. It only takes 2 minutes. 3 level 5 ability users, Emma cursed when she heard the doctor's words. 3, and she still wants her to resist for 2 minutes. This is not to escape for 2 minutes. It's to let her block the opponent head on for 2 minutes. The doctor didn't care about Emma's tone, and still said calmly, I remember you left the coordinates in Xindanjiang, right? Just release those monsters. What? Emma hesitated. Those monsters are wild and untamed. If you just release them casually. There is no time to hesitate. If you don't rely on those monsters, you can't hold on for 2 minutes, the doctor said slowly. Those monsters have been trained for so long, and Li Anping is in Tianjing City, nothing will happen. You go to the ground to meet the enemy. Fighting here will affect me. Emma nodded helplessly. When the person turned around, he had disappeared completely. When he appeared again, he had come to the ground above the center of the array. This was originally the place where the parade should pass, but because of the war in the city, the crowd watching the parade had all left, and the railings on the street. Decorations such as flags all fell to the ground. Emma took a look and didn't care so much. He pressed his hands in the void, and a black gap more than 10 meters long suddenly appeared in the air. Just like a crack in a door, it slowly opened in Emma's hands. This time, Emma opened the portal much slower than usual, because this time she directly opened the portal from Xindanjiang to Tianjing. That is thousands of kilometers away. If Emma hadn't set the coordinates in Xindanjiang in advance, it would be impossible to open such a portal. Such a long distance also caused her portal generation speed to be very slow this time. Damn, 3 level 5 ability users. Don't come to me at this time. Emma continued to input her mind into the portal, watching the black crack expand centimeter by centimeter. She was also praying in her heart that the other party would not come too fast. However, as the saying goes, good things don't work, but bad things do. When the more than 10-meter high portal in front of Emma opened more than 10 centimeters, the figures of 3 men slowly appeared in front of her. Demir Donner looked at Emma and teased, the thing in this woman's hand is the center of the defense array? It's really obvious. Beside him were Titan and Solomon. The two of them stood very close to each other, but they were about 2 or 3 meters away from Donald. It seemed that they were very worried about the first level 5 ability user in history. Hearing Donald's words, Titan frowned. As a veteran level 5 ability user in the Star Alliance, he had the power to control gravity. He had led a team to attack Daxia Dragon Bird before. Naturally, he was fully responsible for the plan to break the defense array of Tianjing this time. It's not her, she is Emma, a level 5 ability user of Daxia Dragon Bird, whose ability is a portal. The center of the defense array should be underground where she is now, Titan said lightly. I'm afraid he is trying to stop us. The other party is adjusting the defense array. Once successful, the situation will be unfavorable to us. Solomon stood up directly. Don't waste time, Li Anping has escaped, let's hurry up here. After saying this, he blew a breath gently, and a white mist rushed towards Emma's position. It was the ultimate freezing air that was countless times colder than liquid nitrogen. Wherever it passed, it almost brought all molecular movements to an infinite degree of complete stillness. The temperature around it dropped rapidly. Before the white ice mist approached Emma, a thick layer of frost had already formed under her feet. Such terrible freezing air was just a breath that Solomon took casually. Emma's mind immediately became highly focused. She knew that the next period of time would be a life and death battle for her. As Emma moved her mind, a black portal appeared in front of the cold air, and the cold air rushed into the portal. At the same time, a black portal opened above the heads of the three titans, and the surging cold air came directly from this portal. Facing the reversed mind energy, the three people present did not move at all, only Solomon raised his right hand, and the originally fierce and abnormal cold air immediately turned into a tamed puppy, gathered into a ball, and shrank into Solomon's hand. Donald on the side smiled sinisterly. You can't do it, let me play with her. After he finished speaking, he saw his fingers flicking, and the magnetic field around him immediately showed a series of complex changes. Emma didn't know that Donald directly caused an effect similar to microwave heating. For her, the temperature at her location rose sharply in an instant. She screamed. A black space fragment had already slashed towards the location of the three titans through the air. This attack was purely caused by an unstable space structure. Even the adamantium alloy could not withstand his slash, so even if the combined strength of the three people present was much stronger than Emma, they had to dodge in the face of this attack. Titan stretched out his hand, and the invisible gravity had already grabbed him and Solomon and flew backwards. As for Donald, he also used the magnetic field to control his body to fly backwards. Seeing that he was surrounded by three fifth-level powerhouses, he was actually forced back by Emma, and a trace of anger flashed in Titan's eyes. In fact, before Shang Jinhai appeared, Titan had always regarded himself as the future leader of the Star Alliance. He believed that he was the strongest person in the world except the Queen. But he didn't expect that since Shang Jinhai appeared, the Queen actually put all her attention on Shang Jinhai, and Shang Jinhai also showed unprecedented talent. Replaced Titan's position and became the hot candidate for the new leader of the Star Alliance. How could Titan swallow this breath? And then there was the outlier Li Anping, who suddenly appeared and suppressed the four poles with an incredibly strong force. This made Titan secretly hate and envy. This continuous psychological gap has been tormenting him. He wished that all the newly emerged level 5 ability users, such as Li Anping and Shang Jinhai, would die. Now even Li Anping's subordinates, a woman who was previously unknown, were in a state of death fighting, and the anger in Titan's eyes flashed. The solace of his feet stepped lightly on the ground. Suddenly, an invisible force surged directly from the earth and grabbed Emma in front. It was the invisible gravity from the entire planet, which was instantly magnified 10 times by Titan's ability. Kneel down. Accompanied by Titan's roar, 10 times the gravity directly acted on Emma. She was not a person with a strong physique, and this directly caused damage to her body. Especially the internal organs, which suffered huge pressure. She spit out a large mouthful of blood on the ground with a wow sound, and she couldn't help but kneel on one knee. Countless fragments and cracks were also pressed on the ground. Seeing Emma trying to stand up, Titan's eyes flashed with a trace of brutality. Did I tell you to stand up? Accompanying Titan's words, a gravitational force began to pull Emma's arm as the center, and her right arm made a series of crackling sounds, as if it would be broken in the next moment. Ah! While Emma screamed, she waved her hand and another space fragment slashed at Titan. However, although this attack was powerful, it was too slow to destroy the stable structure of space to achieve the attack effect. Titan took a light step and dodged the attack. Just as he raised his right hand and wanted to give Emma a fatal blow, the space door that Emma had opened before, which was more than 10 meters high, expanded instantly and completely blocked Emma's body. Titan frowned and directly increased the gravitational output again, but there was no reaction. If he could bypass the space gate, he would be able to see the place where Emma had knelt, leaving a black portal on the ground. She had already entered and teleported herself away. Solomon, who was standing by, approached Titan, staring at the suddenly enlarged portal with his eyes, and said, "There's something wrong with this door." Donald also nodded, "A 10-meter-high portal, what exactly is she going to teleport first?" "No matter what it is, you'll die if you come out," Titan snorted coldly, raised his hand and changed the upward gravity again. Where Emma had just stood, countless cement and soil flew up, and a big pit was formed in an instant, getting deeper and deeper, spreading towards the doctor's position. "That woman has escaped, Donald, you come to help, and quickly destroy the defense array. Solomon, you come to guard." Titan called several times but didn't hear a response, turned around and saw Donald staring at the dark portal. "Something's wrong," Donald said. Titan said, "Something is wrong, come and help. It is crucial to see whether the defense array is breached. I don't want to fight anytime soon. Li Anping can leave if he wants." As the two were talking, a roar like a lion or a tiger suddenly came from the portal. Solomon's face changed, and he looked at Titan and said, "Did you hear it?" Donald laughed, "It sounds like the roar of some animal." Titan opened his mouth and was about to say something. Suddenly, a giant dragon claw more than 3 meters thick and covered with countless golden scales stretched out from the portal, grabbing the Titan fiercely with an endless fishy wind. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xianglang Guo. Chapter 337. What the hell? Seeing the huge dragon claw grabbing towards him, Titan raised his eyebrows. The infinite gravity of the earth had already acted on the dragon claw, trying to push the dragon claw towards the ground. But it was useless. The invincible ability seemed to have lost its effect at this moment. In the end, Titan only had time to use his mind energy to defend his body, and was directly shot away by the dragon's claws. In a series of loud noises, he knocked down 3 buildings in succession, and finally fell to his knees. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were staring in the direction of the portal. This monster can also control gravity. As he watched, 3 huge golden dragon heads scrambled out of the portal. Before the entire figure came out, the 3 dragon heads roared impatiently, and sound waves visible to the naked eye surged in all directions, almost lifting the entire street. Just now, the golden 3-headed dragon slapped the Titan away with one claw. As a monster that also has the ability to manipulate gravity, he may not be as good as the Titan in terms of quality, but the gravity he controls is far beyond the pure quantity. Other side. If the Titan wiped the corners of his mouth when the golden 3-headed dragon crawled out of the portal, he was still angry. Then when a black dragon crawled out of the portal, Titan, Solomon, and Tang Na already felt that there was some trouble. After the black dragon, the fire demon giant appeared again, destroying like a demon, which already caused cold sweat to form on Solomon's head. But this is not over yet, the next time is for the 3 titans. It's like stepping into the age of myth, a giant with one eye. A giant snake rising into the sky like a dragon, a unicorn completely wrapped in flames, dozens of meters tall, and a fox with 9 tails that could cover the sky and the sun. There are 10 monsters in total, and each one of them gives Titan a sense of danger. After they appeared together, they set their sights on the three Titans. Titan said softly, "Donner, call for backup." "I'm already doing it," Donner nodded. One after another, electromagnetic signals are being emitted from his body. While they were talking, the monster army on the opposite side had already moved. The first one to take action was a huge nine-tailed fox. With his roar, an inexplicable fluctuation suddenly appeared in the air, and countless red, blue, and black powers were like bubbles. It converged towards his mouth, and in just a few seconds, a black energy bomb the size of a car had been gathered together. Although they still don't know the principle of this black energy bomb, the sense of threat coming from it still makes the three Titans feel numb. In short, if you are hit by this thing, the feeling that it must be doomed. So before the nine-tailed fox could spit out the black energy bomb, the three of them had already scattered. The next moment, the energy bomb hit the Titan's previous location at an astonishing high speed. There was a loud bang. Following the explosion of the energy bomb, a red ball of light directly enveloped a distance of several hundred meters. Titan looked back and saw that the entire neighborhood had turned into a big crater. The unknown energy directly exploded all materials into powder, and the explosion formed a surging air wave. It blew directly over his body and made his clothes rustle. This was like a signal. After the nine-tailed fox took action, the other nine-headed monsters couldn't wait to take action. The black dragon soared into the sky, carrying hundreds of thousands of tons of power, and pounced towards Tang Na, who was flying in mid-air in the distance. The golden three-headed dragon was like a rampaging tank, but it was tens of thousands of times more ferocious than the tank. It rushed directly towards the Titan. Wherever it passed, whether it was streets, cars, or buildings, everything was affected by the terrifying gravity. Directly pressed into biscuits. Green flames burned on the body of the Balrog stone man, and before he even got close, it melted the streets and cars nearby, turning all the ground he passed into black glue. He started running slowly, and every time he landed on the ground, it caused a tremor all around, like a green meteor, hitting Solomon fiercely. All of a sudden, each of the three powerful level 5 ability users were besieged by 3 or 4 monsters. Not only are these monsters incredibly powerful and generally invulnerable, they also each have special abilities. And he had no scruples at all when it came to fighting. Not only did it cause astonishing damage to the surrounding areas, but it also completely put the three Titans at a disadvantage. Especially Titan, the golden three-headed dragon, stared at him and chased him around like a dog, making him unable to use his ability to manipulate gravity with one hand, and could only barely control part of his body's gravity. And then cooperated with the 5th level thought energy to survive the siege of several monsters. This damn beast, ever since Titan became the 5th level, when had he been chased by someone like a dog? He looked at the golden three-headed dragon with infinite fury in his eyes. This beast, I will definitely cramp and skin it later. Suddenly, a red bolt rolled towards him in the air. The one who launched the attack was a red monster. The monster was about 2 or 3 meters tall. It stood upright, with huge bone spurs emerging from his hands. Elbows, back, and shoulders grew out, and there were 2 huge sharp horns on top of his head. In addition, the monster has a long and thick tail, like a humanoid Tyrannosaurus. It is the demonic monster that Li Anping calls destruction. Red lightning bolts shot out from the center of his palm, gathering together like a red streak, breaking down all matter into its most primitive molecular state wherever it passed. Titan naturally didn't know the effect of this attack, but he would never let himself try it. He just stretched out his hand and hundreds of gravity pulled the palm of destruction to the side, and the red lightning pulse changed direction, brushing Titan's body and directly cutting a building hundreds of meters away in half, collapsing towards the ground. It was just this delay. The golden three-headed dragon behind him had caught up and raised its dragon claws. With the blessing of gravity, It slapped Titan fiercely. Beast, Titan saw the dragon claws covering him, and a trace of hesitation flashed in his eyes. At this moment, a series of sonic booms sounded in the sky, and 12 silver shadows rushed towards the monsters. One of the silver lights accelerated directly and hit the golden three-headed dragon fiercely. With a bang, the silver light was only the size of a thumb compared to the golden three-headed dragon, but the collision actually knocked the golden three-headed dragon staggering. The dragon claw that hit the Titan also tilted to one side. It hit the ground directly, creating a pit several meters deep, and smashed countless cracks in the surrounding ground. Under the collision of the silver shadow, the golden three-headed dragon screamed miserably, and a large wound was cut on its back. He could only feel that the thing that hit him was very hard and very sharp. His solid scales were just like paper in front of the other party. The golden three-headed dragon turned his head. He saw a humanoid body more than 3 meters high, with a silver-white metallic light all over its body. Every line and every protrusion on the humanoid body gave people a feeling of solidity, diamond, and indestructibility. And the sharp blade ejected from the wrist of the body that just cut a wound on the back of the golden three-headed dragon was the sharp blade ejected from the wrist of the body. The three-headed dragon roared at the mechanical soldiers who came to support the Star Alliance. They had already pounced on them. The dragon and the man immediately started to roll and fight. This was different from the previous scene. The mechanical soldier was not as strong as the three-headed dragon, but with the material of adamantium, he was not afraid of any physical attack, no matter how the three-headed dragon slapped and bit. Using or controlling gravity to squeeze him had no effect at all. Instead, the mechanical soldier used the sharp blades that popped out of his body to leave scars on the three-headed dragon from time to time. The situation in other places was similar. With the electromagnetic signal sent by Donald, 12 robots made of adamantium broke through the air and directly faced the 10 monsters summoned by Emma. The monsters had an absolute advantage in strength, but the 12 robots were like indestructible cockroaches. No matter what kind of attack they suffered, they could get up immediately and continue to fight. The black dragon rushed in the sky and slapped a robot away with one palm. The robot rolled over more than 10 times in the air and rushed into a building. It made a series of crackling sounds and rushed out from the other end of the building. Then it knocked down a row of houses and sank into the ruins. But after a few seconds, he stood up again from the wreckage. His whole body looked unharmed and rushed towards a monster again. On the other side, the nine-tailed fox opened his mouth again, and various blue, red, and black bubble-like energies gathered towards his mouth. A total of 5 high-density black energy bombs had been gathered, bringing bursts of air-breaking sounds and shooting towards the robot in front of him. The earth-shaking explosion sounded throughout Tianjin at once. The huge light column shot up directly into the sky and kept spreading around, turning all nearby man-made objects into fragments in an instant. When the beam of light slowly dissipated, all the buildings had disappeared, leaving only a large pit. The robots were still unscathed, and there was not even a dent or scratch on the surface. They rushed towards the monsters again. At this time, Titan and the other 2 had already left the battlefield of the monsters and robots. He looked at the explosions and flashes in the distance, and snorted coldly, "These beasts almost ruined my big plan." Solomon asked, "What should we do now?" Titan said decisively, "We will dig a tunnel from the ground. No matter what, we must completely destroy the defense array." At this time, Titan's face suddenly changed. "Damn it! What's wrong?" Solomon asked. Titan said with an ugly face, "The other party has restarted the defense array." Really, hearing this news, Donald laughed. "Then, I don't need to maintain the magnetic field changes, right? Maintaining the magnetic field covering the entire Tianjin has always prevented me from using my full strength. No need." As the sentence fell, the magnetic field and gravity changes of the entire Tianjin stopped at the same time. All the people suddenly found that the communicator that was originally unusable could be used again. Titan and Donald, who had been maintaining the two fields, retracted their abilities at the same time. Boundless power surged in their bodies. Now that they were free of burden, they were in a truly complete state. The next moment, the three of them each took out a spiritual gem from their arms. Get ready to fight. Since the defense array has been restarted, we may be besieged next. Act according to circumstances, and everything should be based on the plan as the top priority. When Li Anping used the sword of the past to chop the ark in the sky into pieces, the doctor's voice was transmitted directly into his ears through the defense array. Your Majesty, someone just changed the gravity coefficient of the entire Tianjing, causing the defense array to fail. I have restarted it now. Very good, Li Anping said calmly. Teleport all the enemies in Tianjing City with me. Destination, number 3 training ground. The doctor was stunned and asked again, Your Majesty, you said all. Li Anping said coldly, do you need me to repeat it again? No, the doctor immediately replied, it has started to teleport, but there are 3 level 5 ability users intercepting the army outside the city. They are not in the defense array, and I can't teleport them. The corners of Li Anping's mouth curled up a little bit, revealing a cruel smile. It doesn't matter, just stepping on some ants, it won't take me long. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Go. Chapter 338. The third training ground was one of the training grounds that Li Anping built in the deepest underground layer of the former site of the 8th Research Institute for his own training. The entire training ground is made of special alloys, like a huge iron box, which wraps the entire training ground. As for the size of the training ground, it is a square space with a length and width of 1 kilometer and a height of about 10 meters. Just after Li Anping gave an order, a group of vague figures suddenly lit up in the center of the training ground. The next moment, more than 10 people appeared in the center of the training ground. These more than 10 people were divided into 2 sides. The right side was led by a blonde woman, who could be called a goddess in modern terms. There was not a single flaw on her perfect face. If this woman was born in ancient times, I am afraid that this face alone would be enough to turn people upside down. Behind the blonde woman were Shang Jinhai, Titan, Solomon, Tang Na, Song Bang, Zhu Rong, and Kailan King. Among them, Song Bang and Zhu Rong were still in a state of fighting. Song Bang held 2 high-frequency swords in his left and right hands, while Zhu Rong was covered with a layer of flames all over his body. As soon as he appeared, he caused several people around him to retreat. Solomon frowned and blew a breath of cold air towards the place where he was sitting, restoring the temperature around him to the original level. Opposite them, the man in the lead was Li Anping. He was holding a sword in his right hand, and the black incarnation of mind slowly floated behind him. When Zhu Rong and Song Bang saw Li Anping, a hideous look appeared on their faces, and the resentment in their eyes was like a demon from hell. Full of resentment and murderous intent. Standing more than 10 meters behind Li Anping were Bai Xing, Fang Yahuang, Emma, Xia Likan, Xia Yunyuan, Jing Guang, and Yan Bei. They were all injured. Especially Xia Likan, there were deep injuries on both arms, and there was a penetrating wound on his chest, and the muscles inside were almost completely carbonized. If it weren't for the healing power of life in his 8 dragon power, he would have probably fallen down long ago. This shows how fierce the defense battle of the Great Xia Dragon Bird Base was. Xia Yunyuan seemed to be much better in comparison. However, her current image was very different from before. Her whole body was wrapped in a layer of black clothes. In Li Anping's observation, this layer of clothes wrapped Xia Yunyuan like mucus, as if it had life, constantly absorbing Xia Yunyuan's mind. It seemed to be a parasitic creature, absorbing Xia Yunyuan's mind. To enhance some of his powers. Why teleport them here, doctor? This guy, is you meddling in other people's business? Li Anping ignored Song Bang and the others who were facing a great enemy. He wanted to let the doctor teleport all the people behind him, but after thinking about it, he ordered, Fang Yahuang. Protect them all. Understood. When Fang Yahuang finished the sentence, a 1-meter-wide invisible space had already enclosed Bai Zing, Emma, Xia Likan, and Xia Yunyun on their side. Jing Guang and Yan Bei all surrounded them. From now on, anyone who wants to attack them must first cross a distance of 33,000 kilometers. And it is almost impossible to do this in front of Li Enping. This is also the way Li Enping gave up asking the doctor to teleport them back. In comparison, they will be safer under the protection of Fang Yahuang. Li Enping waved the handed-down sword in his hand, looking at the queen's eyes as if he was looking at a pile of delicious desserts, and he said lightly, "Emma, Bai Zing, don't do anything extra, these people are all mine." At this point, a faint blood light appeared in his eyes. At this time, the doctor's voice sounded in his ears again, "Your Majesty, there is a level 5 ability user who is incarnated as lightning and shuttles through the circuit. The speed is too fast and I can't catch him. There is also a guy who manipulates soil and rocks. He hides too deep, and I can't do anything." "It doesn't matter," Li Enping said lightly. His eyes were looking at the queen from beginning to end, and he didn't move. He still remembers the state of God he reached after swallowing the spirit gem when he defeated Hui. So among these people with abilities, it can be said that the queen is the one he looks forward to the most. If he can use the sword handed down from generation to generation to absorb the queen's 6th energy level ability, Li Enping believes that his power will reach a higher peak. The queen has long been accustomed to being stared at by others. Whether it is her beauty or her strong strength, she will be the focus of everyone's eyes no matter where she is. But Li Enping's eyes are different. The queen can't feel any appreciation from her eyes. There is only naked desire. Li Enping's eyes don't seem to be looking at people, but at food. With a frown, the queen still didn't take action immediately. The invisible mental power instantly connected to the sea of consciousness of Shang Jinhai, Titan, Solomon, Donald, and others. She said to Li Enping, "Li Enping, I never thought that you, who was so weak back then, would reach this level today and possess enough power to dominate the world. To be honest, I have never regretted anything in my life, but until today, I have one thing I regret most in my life, which is not to wipe you out back then." The Queen of Heaven sighed, "If you give me another chance to go back to 2 years ago, I will definitely take action personally and use the power of the entire Star Alliance to kill you at all costs." When the Queen of Heaven said these words, "Killer," the intention was overwhelming, as if she would take action at the next moment. The mental force field enveloped the entire training ground, and along with her words, countless seas of blood seemed to be churning in the air. But in the next moment, these murderous intentions disappeared without a trace. The Queen changed the topic and continued, "With your current strength, you can at best compete with us in the same chamber. Once a fight breaks out, it may be the result of losing both sides, and it will be in vain. The countries in the Western continent took advantage. So, why don't we join forces? With the strength of the two of us, once we join forces, who in the world can stop us? When the time comes we will rule across the sea, you will rule your eastern continent, and I will lead the western continent." "What did you say?" Song Bang was the first to jump out. "I absolutely disagree with this kind of thing. Li Enping must die today. And these traitors from Daxia Longke must also go to hell with him." When facing Song Bang, the Queen just glanced at him, and seemed to pass some information into his mind. Song Bang was stunned for a moment, and finally glanced at Li Enping reluctantly, then stepped back and stopped talking. "Li Enping, please think carefully about what I said." Before she finished speaking, Li Enping waved his hand. Had stopped them from continuing. "There's nothing to say," Li Enping said coldly, "you guys are all going to die." While speaking, the sticky murderous aura on Li Enping's body was like a blade against the cheeks of the Queen of Heaven and others. Just as Li Enping finished these words, the incarnation of Nian Qi moved together with Li Enping. In fact, the reason why Li Enping did not take action at the first moment after the transmission was completed was only because of one person, Shang Jinhai. Although Shang Jinhai's ability does not stop time, but it has an almost time-stopping effect. But because of the interval, Li Anping knew that he could not use this ability at the first time. He would definitely use it at the most critical time. And once it is used, I am afraid that it will continue to use this ability by letting its companions attack itself continuously. However, judging from Shang Jinhai's 3 performances so far, even if he uses his ability passively, it also cannot be superimposed during the duration of the ability. To put it simply, after being attacked, an ability similar to time stop is activated, but when the time stop time is weaving into the future, the ability will not be activated again after being attacked. In other words, it doesn't matter whether it is passive or not. Whether you use it actively or not, Shang Jinhai activates his ability. There must be a time interval. But this is for others, and for Shang Jinhai himself, no matter who attacks him, it will cause him to become an observer of the entire universe and enter a state of weaving the future. Therefore, Li Anping knew that when the transmission had just started and completed, the other party must be most alert and react the fastest. At this time, it is left to Li Anping to take action, and the time interval for the opponent to activate his ability is too short. Therefore, Li Anping did not take action immediately, but chose to wait or create a better opportunity. In fact, since Shang Jinhai appeared, although Li Anping's eyes were fixed on the queen, at least half of his attention was on Shang Jinhai. Shang Jinhai's heartbeat, breathing, pupils, and every tiny movement were under his observation. Any mistake or emotion on his part may give Li Anping an extra tenth of a second before he can activate his ability. For Li Anping now, even a fraction of a second is enough for him to kill him. So, just as he finished speaking these words and the murderous aura that filled his body with hundreds of millions of lives left, Shang Jinhai's pupils shrank slightly and his heart beat a little faster. A series of information flashed through Li Anping's brain like lightning, and he knew that the time had come. Shang Jinhai's talent is indeed very strong, and his ability is also very good, but unlike Li Anping, who is a practical fighter, he started fighting when his ability was still at level 0, and came out with one sword after another. He is like a flower in a greenhouse, which reaches heaven in the next step under the cultivation of the Queen of Heaven. So when he faced Li Anping's incredible murderous intent, he couldn't help but feel a trace of fear in his heart, and there were some slight fluctuations in his spirit. And this subtle fluctuation was accurately captured by Li Anping. Almost at the moment when Li Anping's words reached everyone's ears, the legendary sword in Li Anping's hand was like a bolt of lightning, directly tearing the atmosphere, spanning a distance of tens of meters, and stabbing towards the Queen of Heaven. But between the sword and the Queen's body, a person who shouldn't appear appears. Song Bang, a level 5 expert with bullet time ability, is probably the fastest person here except Li Anping. But even so, according to Li Anping's calculations, Song Bang's speed should be completely unable to keep up with his speed at this time. There was no time to think about why Song Bang's speed became faster, and Li Anping didn't need to think about why Song Bang's speed was faster than in front of him. Because facing Li Anping at this time, Song Bang's interception was meaningless. Li Anping's figure did not change at all, and even the direction of the handed down sword did not change at all. The Song Bang in front of him was like a ball of air to him. Li Anping rushed over directly, just like stepping over a ball of air, and Song Bang's entire body was directly smashed into countless pieces, just like a watermelon dropped from a 50-story building to the ground, exploding in all directions. Li Anping stepped over Song Bang in one step, as if nothing had happened, and the sword in his hand, with enough power to penetrate everything and cut through everything, stabbed fiercely at the chest of the Queen of Heaven. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 339. With a bang. The bursting airflow directly spread wildly in all directions of the training ground with the tip of the sword as the center. Li Anping stabbed the sword with the sword and hit the chest of the Queen of Heaven without any fancy moves. The force that was countless times stronger than the flash flood directly passed along Li Anping's arm, from the sword to the chest of the Queen of Heaven, and then from the chest to the whole body of the Queen of Heaven. In less than 0.01 seconds, the whole body of the Queen of Heaven shattered and turned into countless fragments shooting in all directions. But Li Anping, who witnessed this scene, did not see the slightest smugness on his face. Because he did not intend to explode the Queen of Heaven with this sword, but to penetrate her with one sword and then absorb her ability. Rather than saying that Li Anping exploded the Queen of Heaven with one sword, it is better to say that the Queen of Heaven's body decomposed itself. There was neither blood nor flesh in the exploded body. The body of the Queen of Heaven had completely turned into a nearly transparent fluid substance, a bit like a jellyfish in the sea, scattered into hundreds of pieces and falling in various corners of the training ground. Happiness, fear, excitement, nervousness. Li Anping could feel the various mental fluctuations emanating from these masses of matter. Because the mental fluctuations emitted by the other party were so strong that ordinary people could feel them. The air did not vibrate, but Li Anping could hear the voice of the Queen of Heaven, which was the information directly transmitted by the other party through the spirit. Li Anping, the voice of the Queen of Heaven was full of madness and anger. You are looking for death. But the anger she transmitted had no effect on Li Anping. Before he figured out the situation of the Queen of Heaven, Li Anping had temporarily given up on her and changed to the next target. At the same time, the moment before Li Anping blew up the Queen of Heaven with a sword, the incarnation of the mind on the other side also pointed out and pointed at Solomon's forehead. Solomon's body and outside are two distinct worlds. His body has always maintained an ultra-low temperature of -200 degrees. Once any form of attack breaks through the epidermis, the attack will be stopped in an instant by almost stopping the movement of molecules. However, the finger of the incarnation of mind energy did not explode his head. Instead, it directly enveloped Solomon's entire body with a void force field, squeezing him into a thumb-sized flesh and blood. The next moment, the incarnation of mind energy flashed again and came in front of Titan, pointing out again. This time, the incarnation of mind energy encountered huge resistance. Titan's body. After putting down the huge burden of changing the gravity coefficient of the entire Tianjing, it has recovered to its full state. At this moment, he himself is like a huge, stable gravitational field. The universal gravitation between countless planets, matter, and him is magnified countless times, but it cancels each other out. A state of relative balance has been reached. In this case, once a strong external force attempts to be applied to him, the balance will be broken in an instant and he will be backfired. This is the situation that the incarnation of mind energy is facing now. The void force field instantly broke the balance of the gravitational field in Titan's body, and the power that was enough to destroy a city burst out in an instant. It almost pushed the void force field back. If Emma had encountered a Titan in a complete state before, she might have died in one encounter. But this kind of power that Titan himself did not react to, which burst out instinctively and lacked conscious guidance, was not enough for Li Anping now. I saw the void force field shrink, and tens of millions of tons of power burst out at the same time. The gravitational field in Titan's body had almost no power to resist, and the void force field instantly pressed him into a meatball. Li Anping and the incarnation of mind energy passed by each other and had already stuffed two meatballs into their mouths, and then rushed towards Tang Na and Zhurong respectively. So far, only a moment has passed since Li Anping launched the attack. Except for Song Bang and the Queen of Heaven who reacted, the others were completely in a state of time suspension for Li Anping. Originally, according to Li Anping's estimation, he could kill one or two more people, but if Song Bang's appearance was the first accident and the Queen's change was the second accident, then the next reaction from the other side was the third accident. The Queen's mental force field can connect the brain consciousness of different people in the form of mental connection. This is also the first thing she did after the transmission. In the case of mental connection, the Queen and Shang Jinhai, Titan, Solomon and others communicated with pure consciousness without any obstacles. If the efficiency of communicating word by word through human vocal cords was equivalent to 10 kb network speed before, then after the mental connection, the speed of information transmission has reached hundreds of megabytes per second. So a look from the Queen can make Songbang retreat. Because she told Songbang through the mental connection that his real purpose at that time was to delay time and wait for the Thunder Emperor to arrive. Unfortunately, Li Anping did not give them too much time. But the mental connection not only allowed the Queen and others to communicate at high speed without obstacles, but also transmitted the world observed by the Queen with the mental force field to their brains. It even took over their nervous system and directly controlled their bodies with the mind. In this case, their reaction speed and thinking speed were all accelerated countless times. So Songbang was able to surpass the bottleneck of the original speed, and was the first to react, taking a step forward and blocking in front of the Queen. Even though this was already his limit, even though it was meaningless to Li Anping. Although the rest of the people reacted at the same time as Songbang through the mental force field, their bodies could not keep up with their reactions, and they could not make effective defense or counterattack. Only one person, Shang Jinhai, did not need to make any specific actions to change the situation. When he took the initiative to activate the unchangeable world, the whole world began to stop. Shang Jinhai looked up and saw that Li Anping and his mind incarnation were both still in the air. The Queen herself was gone, but she had turned into countless spiritual bodies scattered in space. Songbang still stood in front of the Queen's position before. Whether it was the effect of Shihe's immortal body or the immortal body of Huang Quan country, the shattering of his body was just a matter of a moment for him, and now he was unharmed. Kailan King and Tang Na made a retreat together. Under the acceleration of electric current and magnetic field, their speed was indeed faster than other level 5 ability users. As for Zhu Rong, his body did not move, but there were flames about to spray out of his pores. In the static world, Shang Jinhai slowly exhaled, then walked towards one of the spirit bodies of the Queen of Heaven and touched it with his hand. The moment Shang Jinhai's right hand touched the spirit body, all the spirit bodies in the space shook together and quickly gathered towards Shang Jinhai, like a ball of mercury, constantly deforming and aggregating, and finally merged into one again, reorganizing the image of the Queen of Heaven. The Queen of Heaven held Shang Jinhai's hand, looked at Li Anping with lingering fear, and said lightly, "It's exactly as we expected. This battle has become a round-based system." The Queen of Heaven was right. The battle between Li Anping and them has now become a round-based system. When Li Anping started at full speed, they were no different from those who were static to Li Anping. And when Shang Jinhai's ability was activated, Li Anping became a static existence to them. To win, it depends on who can kill the opponent in their turn. In this still world, the Queen Mother and Shang Jinhai first walked towards Zhu Rong. As Shang Jinhai put a hand on Zhu Rong's shoulder, Zhu Rong's body moved, and endless flames were about to burst out from his body surface. However, as the mental force field transmitted countless information into his mind, he paused and retracted all the flames. Very good, as long as Li Anping can be killed, anything is fine. Zhu Rong's face showed a trace of ferocity, and then, accompanied by Shang Jinhai and the Queen Mother, he came to the middle position between Li Anping and the incarnation of mind energy. Because the incarnation of mind energy and Li Anping rushed towards the Queen Mother and others together, they were also very close. Zhu Rong stood between the two, about 2 meters away from them. There seemed to be a violent force rushing around in his body, trying to rush out of his body, and there were traces of flames coming out of his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth, and even his body surface began to crack, and there seemed to be magma-like substances flowing from the cracks. The next moment, Shang Jinhai's hand had left Zhu Rong's shoulder, and the other party became still again. Then the Queen of Heaven and Shang Jinhai found Demir Donner again. He didn't have any extreme reaction, and laughed through the mental connection. Has it started? I'm really looking forward to it. Will Li Anping survive, or will we die? I saw him walk to the side and start to activate his ability. The invisible magnetic field was like a sphere, wrapping Li Anping, the incarnation of mind energy, and Zhu Rong together. Powerful electromagnetic force surged in the air, but this was just the beginning. Because the past could not be affected in the unchangeable world, more power was gathered on Donald's hands, and his hands were almost covered by a dazzling electric light. When he gathered his power to the peak, Shang Jinhai's palm left his shoulder. It's a pity that the Thunder Emperor didn't make it. The Queen shook her head. There is no time to wait for him. After I completed the spiritualization of my body, I thought that physical attacks were no longer effective against me, but Li Anping's power is too strong. Even if the body only retains a trace of physical properties, I can't let him attack like this. At this point, she held her palms, and a trace of blue light was released from her forehead. The truly powerful power of the sixth energy level is about to burst out. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 340. The ability of the Queen of Heaven is called the spiritual force field, which is an ability to observe and interfere with the material world with spiritual power. When her spiritual force field reaches the sixth energy level, she has completed the spiritualization of her body. If the hell map that Li Anping practices is to give the body spiritual attributes, so as to break through the limitations of ordinary physical rules and develop abilities such as strength, speed, and adaptability beyond imagination, then the spiritualization of the body of the Queen of Heaven is an extension of her ability, gradually transforming her own body into a spiritual body to reduce the physical nature of the body. The benefit of this is that basically all physical attacks have no effect on her at even 1%. Her body can be turned into a spiritual body, which can be cut, reorganized, and even heated or frozen at will. The disadvantage is that the body has lost many physical properties, resulting in the Queen of Heaven's body's ability to interfere with the material world. In this way, if she wants to interfere with the real world, she must rely more on the spiritual force field. This is actually an evolutionary direction chosen by humans after reaching the sixth energy level, whether to choose the body or the spirit. After the spiritual force field reached the sixth energy level, the Queen of Heaven finally began to touch the ultimate mystery of humans, the soul. Unlike some abilities that are known but not known, she can carefully observe the existence of souls. For example, in Li Anping's mouth, the souls of Solomon and Titan are flying towards Li Anping's brain. For example, the resurrected Songbang, Zhu Rong, and Kailan King, they have no souls at all. Even they themselves don't know. They are completely puppets made of the earth under their feet. It's just that through the planetary memory, the abilities and memories of those level 5 ability users are recalled. Unless the entire planet is destroyed, or the duration of the ability is up, they will not disappear. Reaching the sixth energy level, the Queen of Heaven's perspective on the entire world has also become different. She can carefully observe the soul and energy, and many strange abilities are no longer secrets in front of her. Even, as long as the soul agrees, she can do it like now. As the blue light on the Queen of Heaven's forehead becomes brighter and brighter, Li Anping's body. The souls of Solomon and Titan were pulled out directly, just like evil spirits crawling out of hell, and were sucked out of Li Anping's mouth little by the spiritual force field of the Queen of Heaven. Originally, the souls of these two people had been absorbed by Li Anping. However, Li Anping's ability to absorb souls to enhance himself has only reached the fifth energy level. Although his own combat power has been far more than the fifth energy level due to the continuous enhancement of his physical body. But the part of absorbing souls, that is, his real ability, is only the fifth energy level. So the same influence on the soul, his ability is far inferior to that of the Queen of Heaven who has reached the sixth energy level. With a whoosh, the souls of the two people suddenly drilled into the forehead of the Queen of Heaven, that is, the Sea of Consciousness. This is a new ability developed by the Queen of Heaven when she reached the 6th energy level. It is called the hometown of the gods. With the consent of the other party, the souls of the newly dead can be connected to her own Sea of Consciousness for preservation. Within 3 days, if these souls fail to find a suitable new body, they will gradually decay and wither. Then they will really die. And within these 3 days, it depends on the type of ability the soul has. The Queen can temporarily borrow the abilities of the other party. Like bloodline system, mutation system, parasitic system, and some ancient systems, they cannot be borrowed. However, Solomon and Titan both belong to the field system, and they are still within the scope of borrowing. If this battle is won, the Queen will also put their souls into the spare body and revive them again. As the souls of the two were absorbed and sealed by the Queen with the hometown of the gods, the Queen moved her hands and exerted the abilities of Titan and Solomon at the same time. With the help of the 6th level mental force field, she even understood their respective abilities better than Solomon and Titan. The essence of Solomon's coldness is to reduce the intensity of molecular movement to achieve the effect of lowering the temperature. In the hands of the Queen, she can not only lower the temperature, but also increase the temperature by intensifying the intensity of molecular movement. The same is true for gravity manipulation. What Titan can only do on himself, the Queen can perform at any position at will. With Li Anping and the incarnation of mind energy as the center, countless gravitational forces from objects, planets, and various substances changed and grew under the manipulation of the Queen Mother until they reached a limit. Everything was just as planned before. At the same time, a cluster of blue sparks lit up from the Queen Mother's fingers. It was a flame burning with mental power, and the flame was only about 1 centimeter away from Shang Jinhai's forehead. Once there was a situation, the Queen Mother would use this flame to impact Shang Jinhai's body, causing his passive ability, the inviolable boundary, to be activated. Everything was ready, and the mental connection transmitted the words to Shang Jinhai. Okay, let's start. The Queen Mother slowly let go of Shang Jinhai's hand, and her whole body became still again. Shang Jinhai looked at Li Anping, and a strong murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Then, let's start. The next moment, the whole world moved again. Fully launched, the super-strong gravity that had been accumulated for a long time acted on the bodies of Li Anping and the incarnation of mind energy for the first time. Then Zhu Rong's body exploded like a volcano. This was a self-destructive attack using his ability. With the increase of the flame jet ability, the flame of more than 12,000 degrees turned into a huge fireball, directly covering Li Anping's body. Coupled with the abilities of Donald and Solomon, an ultra-high temperature and ultra-high pressure environment was born. However, due to the constraints of the magnetic field and because Solomon controlled the degree of molecular movement, no particles or high temperatures spread to places outside the fireball. At this moment, the mental connection connected the consciousness of the Star Alliance together. Under the unified command of the Queen of Heaven, everyone's abilities formed a perfect match. With the effect of the mental force field, the effect of the ability has been greatly increased. The magnetic field controlled by Donald. The high temperature formed by Solomon and Zhu Rong, plus the high pressure created by Titan, at this moment, the fireball covering Li Anping almost turned into a small sun. Li Anping once created a nuclear fusion reaction with the 5th level mental force field and his own void force field. Now, under the coordination of the Queen, the people of the Star Alliance directly reproduced the thermonuclear reaction inside the Sun in the training room. They cooperated with each other and continued to increase the pressure and temperature inside this small Sun at a rapid rate. Next, it will begin to expand due to the continuous increase in heat, and finally even thermal runaway helium fusion will occur. Although the scale of occurrence is not large, the huge force released can definitely destroy the entire Tianjin. If you are unlucky, you may even have to sacrifice 1/3 of Daxia. As for whether there will be a collapse in the end, or even the creation of a substance similar to a white dwarf. It is no longer within the consideration of the Star Alliance. As long as Li Enping can be killed, even if more than 90% of the people on the entire planet die, the Star Alliance will not hesitate. This is the plan formulated by the Star Alliance. Through Shang Jinhai's ability, various abilities are perfectly arranged to cooperate, showing various killing moves to kill Li Enping, and now simulating the internal reaction of the Sun. It is just one of the prepared cooperation. Which plan to use depends on the situation at the time, such as the number of people and which abilities are there. In the eyes of the people of the Star Alliance, Li Enping's figure can no longer be seen. They even had to close their eyes because of the light. They used the mental force field to observe the situation inside. But soon the high temperature and pressure inside the small sun were so high that the mental force field could not scan it. Every time the mental force was probed into it, the queen felt that her consciousness was ignited. "He's dead," Song Bang looked at the huge fireball with a diameter of about 5 meters with a happy face, and his heart was full of satisfaction after revenge. Next to him was the equally excited Kailan King. Li Enping was like an insurmountable mountain. Now the top of this mountain was finally climbed by them. This feeling was no longer just excitement, satisfaction, or joy. Other people like Tang Na, the Queen, Shang Jinhai, and others basically had similar feelings. It was like a heavy stone was put down in their hearts. Their current satisfaction and sense of accomplishment were basically similar to the feeling of playing a game and finally clearing the final boss, but hundreds of times stronger. After all, they were prepared to sacrifice their lives before coming. Now that the boss has finally been defeated, how can they not be excited? And inside the little sun, Li Enping's body is in a constant state of collapse and rebirth. A total of hundreds of millions of souls are constantly consumed, and tens of thousands of souls are used to regenerate his body almost every second. But he did not feel the slightest bit of tension or panic. Instead, he felt a long-lost excitement. Before, the doctor asked Li Enping if he really wanted to teleport all the opponents together. Because in the doctor's opinion, it would be safer to teleport the opponents one by one to Li Enping and let Li Enping kill them. But Li Enping did not take this relatively conservative approach. There is only one reason for this, that is, he is strong enough, so strong that even if he faces all the hostile forces of this invasion at the same time, he can kill the opponent without leaving a single piece of armor and turn it into ashes. So strong that it makes no difference to him whether he is sent one by one or together. In fact, because the defense array of Tianjing was destroyed at the beginning, all the battles until now, because Li Enping was worried that the entire Tianjing would be irreparably hit by the aftermath of his attack, except in the underworld and the destruction of the Ark, he has not used more than 20% of his strength until now. You should know that a year ago, he could rely on his own strength to blow down Mount Fuji and destroy all the surface buildings in Kyoto in one blow. And after more than a year of training, Li Enping's strength, speed, and physical fitness have increased by nearly 10 points in terms of numerical value, not to mention the leap in other various skills. So now, what is his strength? Where is his limit? Even Li Enping himself can hardly estimate. In the eyes of the Star Alliance, the battle with Li Enping will be a turn-based game with each killing move. But in Li Enping's eyes, there is no such thing as a turn or a killing move. These so-called combat forces of the opponent are just a group of lambs to be slaughtered, desserts after dinner. It seems that my previous judgment was wrong. It will be a bit troublesome to kill them with only 20% of my strength. In this case, the aftermath of 50% of the force should be able to be transferred by the current defense array without causing too much impact on Tianjing.